Hi, I'm Jordan Stone with thegoodride.com, and there's never enough SPF for spring conditions, so try not to stare at my goggle tan. I got a chance to try the Burton Cartographer, a unisex board that's been on the line for a few years now. I got to ride it in a 149 with my Union Trilogy bindings and K2 Kinsley boot, which is a mid-soft boot, on variable conditions in the Pacific Northwest. Everything from patches of ice to pockets of snow. I rode a 149 that is right around my favorite size on this board, between a 149 and a 152. This board does actually come from a 144 all the way up to a 62, including a couple wide variations on there. Please be mindful of boot sizing and a waist width to accommodate that boot sizing.
And if you want to support the Good Ride and buy through a snowboarders only shop, check out our sponsor, Blower Board Shop. They have a wide variety of snowboard gear, and they do everything the big stores do in terms of price matching, in terms of fast shipping, great support, great knowledge. Check them out. Buy through our links. It helps the Good Ride tremendously.
Pro of the Cartographer, super stable on the ground, felt very comfortable right away, felt fast and felt great in its turning radius. Con was a little bit out of control when you started getting into tight trees or really technical steep terrain, and didn't really hold an edge in powerful carves, powerful turns. Burton's unisex Cartographer features a free ride directional shape with a 5mm taper. This gives the board just a subtle taper to the tail, with a slightly narrower tail than the nose. So the Cartographer has a directional camber profile. This is characterized by a directional camber under the inserts, a shorter tail with a slight early rise, and a longer nose. This camber profile is really common amongst Burton boards. You're going to see it pretty much across the entire fleet. As such, the snow feeling is usually determined a little bit more by the flex profile, side cut location, and taper. The mild taper on the Cartographer, setback camber, and twin freestyle stance gives this board a more stable and damp experience on the snow. The width of the board did make it feel a little bit bigger than a 149, so I would recommend that this board to intermediate or aggressive riders who are comfortable on camber boards. And even if you wanted to downsize just a little bit because the width will accommodate a bigger foot size. Burton ranks this board as a medium flex profile. I would actually agree with that. It's somewhere in the happy space of medium to aggressive. When traversing and initiating turns, it felt soft, but when increasing speed and driving into turns, the flex held up to more powerful maneuvers. I found that the medium soft flex actually lent itself pretty well to pop and ollies off the edge and off the base. It was really fun to get a little bit off of there. Not really a butter board. It felt like it took a bit more to kind of get back into the back seat and to push into that board, but that's fine. You want a little bit of stability under your foot, this can be a better board. That poppiness did lend itself to the uneven snow. I was pleasantly surprised by the Cartographer's ability to transfer from hard pack groomed to softer off-piste conditions. It was able to absorb many of the bumps and dips under the thin layer of snow and maintain control and speed. So the Cartographer was actually a really nice experience when it came to speeds. I have a need for speed. I like to go fast. This board felt stable and comfortable against the ground, and I think part of that is contributed to that free ride geometry as well as that mild taper. It made it comfortable and made me confident enough to tuck into my turns and really to bomb down a hill. So Burton's base is a little behind when it comes to comparisons, especially in the unisex line when you're looking at bases like on Jones and Cardiff and Karua, even these boards that have really great base glides. So just be mindful that if you are going to purchase a Burton board, tuning is a necessity for that base glide. The Cartographer has a side cut radius of 6.7mm, which is pretty impressive considering its mild taper. This lends itself to quick turning experience and can also transition to longer radius turns. Every time I get on a new board, the first thing I do is try to see how quickly I can go from nose to tail on flat surfaces. That gives me a good gauge on how quickly I can adapt to conditions. Once I start getting into steeper terrain, I want to open up those turns. This board did everything I wanted it to do. With that said, as soon as I got into off-piste conditions, type trees, with variable conditions, so icy in spots, chunky, even some death cookies, this board liked to veer off course. It took a lot of muscle and a lot of quick on-the-spot adjustment to keep it safe. So be aware that this is a little bit more open run board or powder conditions. So softer conditions, you're going to get a more surfy feel, more back-end ride. The slow transitions from heel to toe and the larger feel of the board made this board feel slow and heavy in the trees, at least with hard tracked out conditions. On a few occasions, this board would catch or would feel out of control. Sizing down in the board, it could help this board feel quicker in those runs. So I was not able to get this board in powder conditions. However, I imagine that directional shape, the width and the stability of this board, as well as that ability to set your stance back 3.5 inches, is going to allow you to reduce a little bit of the fatigue that comes with a back leg dominant stance that you're going to get in powder conditions. If you've ever been out there and just had that back leg burn, setting back those bindings as far back as the insert goes and having more nose is really going to help give you a more surfy feel without the fatigue. So I want to emphasize that the Cartographer is designed to be a all mountain free ride board. The way the stance is, the way the camber and everything like that goes, this board's going to feel really good centered. But when you set it back, you're also going to have a pretty good all mountain powder board. If you want a powder specific board, you're going to want to look at something with more nose. You're going to want to look at something that has further setback or even the ability to set it back up to 6 inches. This board isn't going to do that, but it is going to give you a good all mountain quiver killer opportunity. A Cartographer is an interesting design when it comes to directional boards. Directional boards are not typically hand in hand with park or freestyle. Because of the fact freestyle really lends itself to being centered on the board, having equal nose and tail, directional sets back a little bit, makes it a little harder to do switch riding or park. However, this board was designed with a freestyle twin stance and a mild taper to the tail. This allows the board to feel comfortable in switch riding and easy to manipulate off of jumps. I found it to be super poppy off of the edge as well as off of the base, and I was impressed by how jibby it felt, even though it really is a bigger, harder charging all mountain board. I wouldn't recommend this as a primary park riding board. Definitely not something you're going to want to take on boxes or rails just because of the stiffness profile, and that setback stance might make it feel a little washy. But if you're looking for something that has a freestyle feel outside of the park, it is a great option. Overall, the Cartographer with the center to on stance side cut and directional camber really worked well with my style of riding. It gave me a sense of confidence and stability. It is fast when you want it to be fast, and playful when you want to open up on wide groom runs. The width and the flex of the board gives it stability and control of a traditional carving board, but it can impact its ability to navigate tight off-piste terrain. The Cartographer is fun on natural jumps and when switch riding outside of the park. If you commit to waxing this board regularly and maintaining a sharp edge, the Cartographer could easily become your daily driver, your one bore quiver killer.